Thank you, Chairman Bronstein. Thank you, Chairman Jackson. Thank you for the panel members for giving their testimony. It was very enlightening, and I appreciate all the things that they're sharing. I have a couple of questions. One in particular to Ms. Yu, focusing on hate crimes and reporting and how specifically police departments, especially New York City Police Department, are responding. Do you think there's an ability where we had a shortfall where we need some training for community organizations? Being a former lieutenant in the New York City Police Department, I understand that sometimes the layperson thinks about a crime and associates it immediately as that crime, but there's certain criteria that has to be met. Do you think it would be worthwhile for police departments to partner with community organizations so that the messaging could be there and understand what actually constitutes as a hate crime? And I think that would help the police department understand as well. Your thoughts on that, please?
Absolutely, and that is exactly what we've been calling for since January, that there be an infrastructure set up. People don't know the difference between a hate crime or a bias incident, so certainly that's something that we've been asking for months. There wasn't any proactive effort, so the Asian American Federation ran a workshop ourselves that had 70 people, 70 nonprofit organizations coming on. The reality is that our community, because of language access, that we get told all the time, just call 311. People are not going to call 311 because of the language access issue. So who hears all the stories? It's the nonprofit organizations who are the storefronts, who are the frontline folks. So we need to build those relationships. We need to build those relationships not at crisis points, but when there's actually things are quiet, things are seemingly back to life, back to our regular lives. Law enforcement has been incredibly passive, and that is not what we need. We need to be able to build. They need to be able to. One member agency said, I have, a long list of people who've come and told me what's happened to them. Can we please? Who do we call in the precinct, because we can't call 311? And honestly, we were on a call with 311. We were on a call with NYPD. And the response was call 311. And in fact, one of our member agencies said, actually, somebody just came in and reported a hate crime, like a bias incident, or, they wanted to report something to NYPD, and they had to, we've been trying to call 311 for the last half hour. So I think this is very real. I'm worried about, the community residents who are going out. Like, we're hearing stories of seniors who can't go out and get food because they're scared. As Wayne mentioned, there are people who are frontline workers who are getting attacked. So I think we've seen this before. The Arab, Muslim, South Asian community saw this during 9/11, right? And so our community has, members of our community have experienced this, but yet, some of us have been screaming since January, but there's nothing has been done. So
has there been any dialogue with the mayor's office or the governor's office regarding that?
Every day.
Okay.
And I think the governor's office, the New York State Commission on Human Rights, did a workshop about bystander training, which is really helpful. So we hope to extend that, and we are actually putting together programming that works with communities of color, because we know that in these crises, who is vilified and who is targeted. We want to be able to build bridges and, learn from each other, because we have this shared experience of being communities of color in an over-policed city.
Okay, so, fair enough. Thank you. So I think my time may be running out soon, so I just have one quick follow-up question in regards to community outreach. I know there's been some mixed messaging coming from the governor's office and the mayor's office in New York City. Is there this goes out to anyone on the panel, if you can offer any insight into how you think the city and the state could collaborate more on outreach to the community, especially when it goes to messaging.
I think everybody has mentioned language access. I think that's critical. I also think investments being made to nonprofit organizations. They are the the nonprofit organizations. Everybody runs to their neighborhood nonprofit organizations because that's who they're telling stories to. But also, the nonprofit organizations have a capacity to ask the relevant questions, as they're doing services. So I think there's that is an untapped resource. I know all of us have mentioned it, but you know during the crisis and after the crisis, we're going to be the ones to help rebuild this economy.